I spent weeks, maybe months, trying to automate my bedroom, and honestly, my wife was not too happy with me. But I stuck with it, and after a lot of testing, a few arguments, and just sheer determination, I finally created automations in the bedroom that work for us every day and night, and they're actually wife approved. So let me show you how I did it. Let's go. My name is Shane, and this channel is all about building an easy, effective smart home that actually works. I've been building out my smart home for years and documenting that here on YouTube. I've always wanted to fully automate my bedroom like I've done with other areas of the house, but the bedroom is a very touchy topic. Nothing will shut down your smart home aspirations like lights coming on in the middle of the night, waking up your spouse. Automations, especially motion-based automations that trigger lights, typically take some trial and error to get just right. And unfortunately, when we're talking about the bedroom where, your spouse sleeps, there's very little room for error. But I was determined to finally get this done and do it in a way that my wife would not want to divorce me. So I had to come up with something that was just foolproof. Again, no room for error. Lights need to come on when I want them to, and only when I want them to. I also need to think of every possible situation, like sleeping in late, different schedules, or maybe even like a Sunday afternoon nap. If my wife wants to lay down and relax at 6 p.m., if the lights come on every time she moves, I'm in trouble. All right, so what's the goal? Let's talk about first what I want to accomplish. I've always wanted the lights to just automatically come on when anyone walks into the bedroom. I want them to turn off automatically when no one is there. I also often go to bed later than my wife and almost always wake up earlier than her. So I need to address this as well. I really wanted to create a way that I could, see in the dark if coming to bed late or getting up early without waking her up. And lastly, I need to have an easy way for her to control all the lights and potentially bypass any automations that would normally run. Again, think of that Sunday afternoon nap as an example. So I knew to accomplish this, sensors and conditions for my automations were gonna be key. I ended up using a number of sensors in the bedroom. I'm using the new FP300 sensor from Aqara for presence detection. It's wireless, so I can place it anywhere to get the best results for those motion-based automations. I place it up high here so it can basically see my whole bedroom, both when I walk in and out of the bedroom as well as like the bathroom. I put two standard Aqara motion sensors on either side of the bed. These are gonna be used to detect when someone gets out of bed. I also got this bed presence sensor from Elevated Sensors. They sell them for different size beds. You will need to use Home Assistant if you're going to use something like this, but this has been really cool. It exposes multiple sensors, including left occupied, right occupied, bed occupied both, and bed occupied either. There are really simple options for calibrating the sensor, and this is going to be key in getting some of my automations to work just right. And lastly, I have a contact sensor on the main bedroom door. I'm just using a Third Reality Zigbee contact sensor here, but any contact sensor would work. The devices I'll be controlling with my automations are mostly Govee lights that I've put throughout my bedroom. I have a neon rope light on the wall sconces, light strips behind the headboard, and underneath both sides of the bed. And then I have a Lutron Caseta switch controlling the main fan light overhead. So I think the best way to explain how I did all this is just to show you and walk you through all the automations that I set up. This isn't necessarily a step-by-step tutorial because I think everyone's situation and setup is going to be different. What works for one may not work for another. Also, how you set this up may vary depending on the automation platform you are using. I created most of my automations in Homey just because I really like using it for creating more advanced automations. But most of these automations can be accomplished using different platforms like Home Assistant for sure, even HomeKit probably. HomeKit alone would be a little tough in the Apple Home app. You would need to use like a third-party HomeKit app, something like the Eve app or Controller for HomeKit if you're just using HomeKit. But again, me showing you this in this video is hopefully just to give you some concepts and ideas and show you what I'm doing. So hopefully you can make your automations in your home a little bit better as well. All right, let's jump right in. Okay, so here we got my, I'm in Homey Pro right now on the computer, and you can see my rooms right now. I'm in the master bedroom. You can see I've got a bunch of lights here, a bunch of sensors. So we have the bed occupancy sensors here. This is from the bed presence sensor. I'm bringing those into Homey through Home Assistant, but these will light up when somebody is laying in bed. So I'm mainly using those as conditions for my automations, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in a second. But we've got all of our lights here. One thing I want to point out that is pretty important is this accessory right here, this bedtime accessory. So this is just a simple, basically a virtual switch, a dummy switch you might call it. And I'm using this also in my conditions, right? So you'll see more when this bedtime switch is on, my motion automations are not gonna run because that means it's bedtime. We don't want the lights coming on in the middle of the night, all right? And you can create virtual switches right here in Homey Pro. You can do this in Home Assistant. If you're using something like Homebridge, you can use that. You can create dummy switches there as well. So there's a few different ways to create dummy switches. This is, again, essentially just a virtual switch that I'm using to kind of help us with our automations. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Now let's jump right over to our automations. You see I've got my bedroom folder right here, and we're going to start with the bedroom motion right here. Okay, so this one is what I'm using to basically turn the lights on and off when motion is detected. And right here, when the FP300, that's the main one I'm using, the presence sensor to detect when somebody's in the bedroom, okay? And you can see we've got kind of some advanced things going on here, but it's not that complicated once I explain it. So when the FP300 detects motion, so when the motion alarm turns on, that means motion is detected. This can happen as soon as somebody walks into the room, and it's been very responsive. Then it's going to go into this, and these right here are our conditions, okay? And in order to turn the lights on, which is what you see right here, all these conditions must be met. So when the sensor detects somebody, and if it's daytime and the bed occupied either is off, right? So that means that's that bed sensor. That means nobody is in bed. So if either side is occupied, that sensor would be on, basically. That motion alarm would be on. So this is checking to make sure that nobody is in bed and if that virtual switch is off. So this is kind of like a redundancy here just to make sure nobody is laying in bed and it's not bedtime, right? So if it's daytime and then nobody's in bed and that bedtime switch is off, we're going to go here. You can see daytime, so this goes here, and all of these conditions must be met, right? And if it's daytime and nobody is in bed and it's not bedtime, then we're gonna run this flow right here, which is just turn all the lights to a bright white. And then if it's not daytime, we're gonna go down to this one. We still need to make sure that nobody is in bed and the bedtime switch is off. So those still must be true. And if it's not daytime, that means it's nighttime, and we're gonna turn all those lights to a warmer white. So I like this because cool, bright white lights are good for the daytime, kind of the circadian rhythm thing. And then at night, you know, you don't want bright, cool whites. You want warmer whites to kind of wind you down and stuff like that. So I'm turning all the lights warm in the evenings at nighttime, and when motion is detected, and during the day, they're a bright white. And these are just other flows. Think of these kind of like scenes. So if I go over here, bedroom white, you can see here, when this flow is started, it's just turning the temperature to a warmer color and turning all these lights to 100% or close to it. Similar with the bedroom bright white, this is just turning them to a cooler temperature and also turning them all the way up. So again, motion is detected, whether it's daytime or nighttime will depend on which one of these runs. But again, we're also checking that, making sure that nobody is in bed and that the bedtime switch is off. Okay, so I found that that bed pressure sensor was elevated sensors is really good for using in my conditions. That's primarily how I'm using it. And I have these notes here just to kind of help me remember what's what. And then this one right here turns off lights when no motion is detected. This is just simple. So when the Aqara FP300, that presence sensor, stops detecting any presence in the room, it turns off all the lights. And I don't really need a bunch of conditions for that because that's just simple. If there's no motion, turn off all the lights. That's a simple one. And then what I wanted to do here is a way to turn that bedtime switch off in the morning to basically kind of reset everything. So what I'm going to show you is at night when we're going to bed, we're making sure that bedtime switch turns on so none of our automations run, right? That's this part right here. But I want to reset that each morning. So what I'm doing is when bed occupied either is off after 40 minutes, it's going to turn off that bedtime switch, which means my motion automations will start running again, right? Because we need that bedtime switch to be off in order for those automations to run. Again, this is just going to restart basically 40 minutes after the bed is not occupied. So that gives us a little time, you know, if maybe I'm up and she gets up and then gets back in bed or something, it's not going to trigger that to start. It only starts 40 minutes after we get up, which is perfect, you know. And also we might not want the lights to be like, you know, super bright as soon as you get out of bed. So this gives us a little time to get up and everything before those motion automations kick in. And next I want to talk about automations under the bed, so that turn on those light strips under the bed so I can see in the middle of the night. That was something that I really wanted to accomplish. I hate having to use like my phone as a flashlight just to see around the room and tripping on stuff. So I really wanted to do this, and I tested this for a while, a few different ways, but I have this automation, this flow set up right here called bed footlight. And this one looks a bit complicated, but let me walk you through this real quick. Starting off, this just is to turn the lights off, right? So this is very simple. When the bed occupied right, which means the right side of the bed, when I get in bed, I have basically two light strips, one on the right side, one on the left side underneath, so I can control them separately. And when the left side of the bed gets occupied, turn off that light strip. Okay, simple enough. When anybody gets in the bed at any time, it's going to turn off the light strip underneath the bed because we don't need those when we're in bed. And to turn on when I get out of bed, I'm using that motion sensor from Aqara that I placed on the side of the bed. So the motion alarm is turned on. So when that motion sensor detects me getting up and that bedtime switch is on, which means we're in bed for the night, it's going to dim the light strip just on my side of the bed to only 3%, and it's turning it like a red color, which is the best late at night. It's not harsh on your eyes. It's really not enough to wake up my wife. And I tried, you know, really anything over 3% was a little too bright. Again, the red color was the best to keep her from waking up. You see right here, I did have the same thing set up for my wife, that when she gets up on her side of the bed, because again, I got a motion sensor on that side of the bed too, to do the same thing for her side. She said she doesn't like it. She doesn't want it doing, you know, coming on. So I just deleted that automation for her side, and it's just working on my side. So she gets up and stubs her toe and can't see. That's on her. She didn't want that working on her side, so I turned that one off. Next up, I had an automation. I was thinking about, you know, if I come into the bedroom and she's already asleep or whatever, I want my side of the bed to light up so I can see to get into bed, right? And so for that, I'm using the contact alarm, the door sensor on the door, okay? So if the door sensor is opened and it's bedtime, so that bedtime switch is on, and I'm not in bed, that's what this means. Bed occupied right is off, then it's going to do the same thing. It's going to turn on that little light underneath the bed just on my side, right? So again, if I walk into the bedroom at night, she's already in bed, that bedtime sensor is on, and I'm not in bed, that's going to happen. Now, I did want to do the same thing for her side because it's rare, but every now and then I might be asleep and she comes in there after me. Maybe she goes out with her friends or something like that, and I don't want her stumbling in the dark, waking me up. So I did set up the same thing on her side of the bed. So if she opens up that door and it's bedtime, the bedtime switch is on, and her side of the bed is not occupied, then it's going to dim her side of the bed. And then again, because what we have set up here, once she gets in bed, it's going to turn off her side of the bed, that little light strip underneath the bed. And then I wanted to set up something, again, this is a lot of trial and error. So when I get up in the morning, you know, my little light strip under the bed comes on or whatever. So I needed a way to turn that off if I'm up for the morning. So I set up another automation that when the bedroom door closes and it's between 5 and 8 a.m., so she's probably still sleeping at this point, it's going to turn off just both of those light strips underneath the bed just to make sure. That way you know, she can't get upset about any lights being on. So even though those probably wouldn't wake her up. So that is how I'm automating underneath the bed, just to give me a little bit of light when I need to get up, when I come in there late and stuff like that. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the buttons. I tried a few things. I actually gave her a third reality button that she could toggle, and I set up a few automations for just single press, double press to turn on and off certain lights. She didn't really use it that much. For her, having buttons that do too many things is just, she's not gonna remember and she doesn't like. So I ended up just kind of scrapping that idea. Plus I was afraid she would lose the button. So I just used the little flick button, just a single button that I put on her nightstand. I also have one on my nightstand. And I set it up just super basic automation. So you remember the bedtime virtual switch that we have? So this is how we're triggering that bedtime switch to come on every night. So if either one of us just does a single press of our flick button at night, it's going to turn off all the lights and it's going to turn that bedtime switch on, which means our motion lights aren't going to, our motion automations aren't going to run, right? And Flick has a homey integration that you can use. So I just created a simple flow. There's two different ones that I did. Mine is a little bit different than hers because I like to set the alarm also with my button. But anyways, I just have a bedtime start, and when the flow is started, it's going to turn on that switch right here that you can see. Again, that's being used as conditions for our automations. It also turns off all the lights in the bedroom, and it also turns on the fan for her, which she likes for when she's sleeping. So what's cool is that she can also use this button here in the middle of the day, you know, if she wants to take a nap, or maybe she just wants to lay down, watch some TV or something, and doesn't want all these lights on or automations running. She can just hit the button, single press anytime. It's going to turn off all the lights and disable all the automations in there because that bedtime switch will be on. And then the other one that I set up, this was for my side of the bed. It's basically the same thing. Turns on the bedtime switch. This one actually arms the security system, turns off all the lights in the bedroom, and turns the fan on. So either one of us can hit our button on our side of the room to accomplish this. And I'll show you real quick in the Flick app what I set up. So if I'm opening up the Flick app here and I go to Caroline Bedside, I actually have, I did set up a double push and a push and hold that she'll probably never use, but double push for her would actually do this exact same thing as a single press, but it's going to set the security system, turn the security system on, like I mentioned that my side does. And then I did a push and hold. This will set a mood that I configured, basically a scene in Homey that just turns all the lights to like a cool, nice red color, which is kind of nice. Sometimes we use that for watching TV. Again, she'll probably never use that, but that's something she can do. And then similarly on my side of the bed, I just have the single push and then a push and hold. We'll turn all those lights to red using a Homey mood. I want to take a quick moment and thank Aqara for sponsoring today's video. As you've seen, I'm using a number of their sensors to make these automations possible in my bedroom, and I'm also using them throughout my home, along with a bunch of other Aqara smart home accessories. They offer everything from sensors to smart locks, indoor and outdoor cameras, and so much more. I'm a huge fan of their Zigbee sensors, like the door window sensors, motion sensors, and water sensors. Of course, that new FP300 multi-sensor that I'm using in the bedroom is awesome. And I'm also using the Aqara M3 hub to connect all of these sensors to my smart home. The G5 Pro camera is probably my favorite outdoor camera that natively supports Apple HomeKit secure video and can also be used as a Zigbee hub. They're actually running some really great deals on the M3 hub, the G5 Pro camera hub, and all of these products throughout the end of the month. It's a great time to upgrade your smart home with Aqara devices. I'll put a link down below in the video description that you can use to check out all of the deals that they have going on right now. And thanks again to Aqara for sponsoring today's video and supporting the channel. As you saw, there are a number of fail safes in place, I guess you could say, to make sure the lights don't come on when they're not supposed to, like in the middle of the night or when someone's laying in bed. And conditions are definitely key to this, whether you're using dummy switches or a bed presence sensor or a combination of things like I'm doing. This is definitely what's allowed these to work beautifully. I also think if you're gonna set up automations like this that your spouse has to live with, it's super important to think of every single scenario, which is what I really tried to do. Those nights where, you know, I come to bed later than her, or when I wake up earlier than her, when I leave the bedroom or go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, you kind of need to think about all of that, you know. Another big one is, you know, if you want to lay in bed in like the middle of the day sometime for some reason, you don't want the lights to just be coming on all crazy. So you get the idea. I've finally been able to get these automations to a place where we're both happy. A bit of a compromise, I guess. She still doesn't really care too much for lights coming on automatically, but she also used to always complain about me leaving the lights on in the bedroom all the time. So, you know, this way they don't. I love lights coming on with motion personally, and now they all go off by themselves, which is kind of a roundabout way that makes her happy. All this, I think she likes just the simple buttons the best. Just an easy way for her to control everything or disable the automations completely. I think that's been really important. I hope by sharing some of my automations, it helped give you some ideas to improve your smart home and your automations. Thanks again to Aqara for sponsoring today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.